Hello and welcome to Vital Readings. This is Vitali Muvunyi and I'm very excited to host you once again. We've been working on different kinds of books and today we are going back to the genre of books that we started with, the books that have something to do with the 1994 genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. Today we'll be covering one of the best books that have been written by the youngest in our nation. She wrote 2 books so far. They both explore something to do with the genocide. And she first published Wait Under the Rainbow, a thoughtful silent battle to heal Rwanda. That was published in 2022. And she also wrote Rebounds, Transgenerational Resilience in Rwanda. That was published in 2024. She's one of great authors that we've got. She's young, she's bright. She's very good at these books, and I hope that we will get some of these books and read through them. Today we'll be exploring her first book. It's called Wait Under Rainbow, and I'm with 2 guests who have both read through the book, but who also have some stories that are kind of similar to the story in the book. That's why I invited them for us to have this conversation. So, Wait Under Rainbow is a book that explores a story of Mr. Cyusa. Mr. Cyusa is the main character of the book, and he's a child that was born from 2 parents who have both survived the genocide, and she's exploring how he gets to know about the genocide, the kinds of struggles that his parents go through, what happens to him at school, and the story of Rwanda and its rebuilding and how it's being rebuilt. So the first guest that I am with today is Mr. Kenny. You may say hello.
Hello, my name is Kenny Roger. I'm very thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so Kenny is also a child of a genocide survivor, and his story similar as the story of Mr. Cyusa in so many ways. I have another guest who is also my co-host many times, but today he will be a guest. I will be asking him questions. Is Mr. Bruno? He may say hello to you as well.
Greetings to everyone, and I'm happy to be here with you guys.
So Mr. Bruno is also a genocide survivor, but also grew up from a household of parents, actually one parent who had survived the genocide, and somehow he may know a thing or two about the struggles of the Gen Z, children who have been born after the genocide. So let's go, and I guess before we get into the book, there are a few things that I mentioned about you guys, but I would like you guys to kind of give us a context on your own instead of me talking about. So I would like you to tell us where you were born, where you grew up from, and how your story relates to the story in this book. And I will start with Bruno.
Thank you. I was born in Rwanda, in Kigali, and grew up here. So the whole story of Rwanda my life is about Rwanda. So I grew up here, I was born here, and I think I'm getting old here too. Yeah.
Welcome.
Well, I would say that I was born in Rwanda. I was born in Kigali as well, and as Bruno said, the Rwandan story revolves around me as well. I'm in an environment where there's a lot of attributes, that connects me to Rwandan story. So, yeah.
Do you see yourself in the book?
Of course, I see myself in the book. In fact, when I was reading the book, I was like, so this woman knows my story, basically, because it's my story. So I understand the story, and basically when I was reading the book, I was removing the name, Cyusa, and putting in Kenny, because it's basically my story. So yeah, I understand the story, and yeah.
Can't wait to listen to more of your stories that relate to Mr. Cyusa's story. Bruno, what was your biggest take from the book?
So it was the surprise first. I expected the author to be so the first chapter was a bit confusing, and I was actually asking you guys, who is this guy? Because I thought it was lady's book. But another takeaway was the name of the book.
So wait, it confused you because it was written by a lady and the main character of the book is a guy.
See the main character
Wow.
being a guy. So I checked a few times. At
To make
first
sure.
I thought Cyusa was another synonym, but when you read the book, you find that Cyusa is a boy who likes to play football like other boys, and the confusion was. But later on, I get to understand the story better. But also, the name of the book Wait Under the Rainbow. When we look at the rainbow and the meaning of the rainbow, you may wonder how can someone be wet? Because
Yeah, the name is very artistic.
because the rainbows, its meaning is that it will not rain. When you say rainbow, you're like, it won't rain. So the name in itself was a big thing, yeah.
Was interesting. So, Kenny, before I forget, I almost forgot to ask you your biggest takeaway from the book.
Okay, from what he just said, I didn't think about that as well. But, wait under the rainbow. It's as if you see something that is beautiful, but how are you under the rainbow? When you see a rainbow, you don't expect the rain, to rain, so you're not expecting yourself, to be wet. But again, my takeaway is that, is the fact that Rwandan people are aware of the, are aware of the attributes that are in their environment, the awareness in young people. Now, the fact that this woman knows what's going on in her environment, knows what's going on in the Gen Z environment, and even wrote a book about it. I used to think about these things in the book, for a long time, but I didn't think that I have the same thoughts with other Gen Z. I'm a Gen Z, so I didn't think that I have the same thoughts and the same perspective on the environment around me as other young people. So it's the awareness that caught my attention. Yeah.
So before I ask the next question, I'm also intrigued by the title. When we get a chance to talk to the writer, Miss Akariza, we'll be asking her about the title. But my thinking, what I thought about the title was that in Rwanda we are protected, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's a rainbow. We're not afraid that the genocide is repeating itself anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yet people are still wet. People are still struggling with a lot of wounds from the genocide. So yes, there's no rain that is coming.
Yes.
But still,
Yeah.
even Gen Z are struggling a bit.
It's a bit tricky because even Gen Z, then most of the Gen Z, they don't know that they are wet. They don't know that they're struggling with with being wet, with being affected with the wounds that come from genocide. They're not aware. But also, again, the fact that there's some of the Gen Z that knows that the attributes that are in the society, in the community, in the environment around them, that those attributes are affecting them, their lives, their decisions, and their mental health. It's also a good thing to thank God for, I would say that. Yeah.
By the way, what do you think is the greatest misconception about Gen Z as far as our history as Rwandans and genocide is concerned?
Okay, what do I think is the biggest misconception about
What do you think people a little bit older like myself and those who are way older than me think about you guys?
First of all, is the fact that you guys don't know that we are affected by the wounds people got from genocide. That is first. And second is that we don't elderly people, they don't think that we understand their pain and what they have gone through. And it's a lot of misconceptions, but basically those two.
Yeah, I think we will get to some of them as we explore the book with the character Mr. Cyusa. I wanted to ask Bruno too. So Bruno, you're not a Gen Z, but I know you have been working with a lot of young people. You do have lots of conversation with them, but you also have, you being a speaker, you speak to a lot of them and you mentor some of them. I wanted to know, those that you mentor who I wouldn't even want to go to one group of people. I was almost going to ask you about those who are born from parents who are genocide survivors, but I mean Gen Z in general that you interact with, and somehow whatever they experienced, you experienced it because you were born before them. So again, the question is similar to Kenny's. What do you think is the greatest misconception that people have about Gen Z in as far as our history is concerned, our history of 1994 genocide against Tutsi?
First of all, you have to give me a little bit of definition on what a Gen Z, and because when you talk about Gen Z, to me, what comes to mind is the issues in Kenya, and that's for sure, you know.
What generation are you? You don't know your generation?
It's not Z. It's not. So where did that Gen Z thing come from? What's the real
Gen Z is
because I'm sure we have people following us that have no idea.
Who is Gen Z?
Simply defining, I would say it's just a name that is given to people who were born from 1997 to 2007, I guess.
I think it's up to 2012 or something.
2012, like that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go into deep, you know, where the name came from, you know, what is the meaning of Z, you know, what is the meaning. Okay, Gen is generation, so it's Generation Z. So I wouldn't go into deep into that, but it's the name that was given to the people that were born, you know, in 1997 to up to 2012, something like that.
Yeah, and those of us who, I think the same people that define the generations also put people from 1984 to 1996. 1984 to 1996 are called millennials. So most of the times when we talk about Gen Z, we are talking about these guys who were born in 2000s, and yeah.
That's interesting. I was always wondering if it's the last generation since Z is there.
I think that's what they're prophesying about themselves.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
So coming back to your questions, my biggest worry or what challenged me with people who were born a little bit after the genocide is that the few that I've interacted with is that they don't want to be involved. It's like a story that they don't want to hear about. They don't want to entertain it. So it's something they don't want to come across their lives. I remember this April, I was somewhere, and some of the guys told me, you know, we have no wounds of the genocide, so why do you keep telling us these things? It's like it's like telling them a story that they don't want to hear. But to me, my understanding is they are trying to avoid the pain that comes with it, so they decide to, you know, to push it away and say this is not this story. We don't want to be involved. But I think Kenny will give us a better perspective on their side. But that's my experience with the young people who were born after the genocide.
I think he wants to add something.
Okay, I wouldn't say that they are trying to escape the story or they don't want to listen to the story. It's just I would say it's the packaging again, right? You know, how you tell them the story, because they were not there physically. You know, they were not affected physically. So because they were not affected physically, sometimes you see the way this the genocide against Tutsi that is affecting the generation that was born after the genocide, it's not physical, it's mental. So instead, I would say it's a packaging. It's the packaging, how you tell them the story, you know. And you see, the way elderly people tell us the story about genocide, again, somehow makes us also feel misunderstood, you know, and put in the box, you know, of trying to, how do I say this? But you see, let me give you an example. Let's take an example of a child that was born in a family where the father, was in the in RPF when they rescued the country and everything. Now that kid is going to grow up, being pressured, to fill in the footsteps
Of the father.
right now, telling that kind of story, to that child, he's going to feel misunderstood, that there are some things, there's something that they can contribute to the country other than filling the footsteps of their father. I don't know if you understand. You're getting right. So I would say that it's more of packaging, how you tell them the story of genocide, instead of saying that we are trying to escape, the story of genocide. Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. And before we go into the packaging, let us first explore the story from the book, and then we will sort of relate it to all of you guys. So this is Mr. Cyusa, and he's born like many of the people that were born during this time. You're born in a relatively better, family, where you're not necessarily told every day that you are a Tutsi or you are a Hutu or you are a Twa. You're born when the police been on the street greet people, and you don't have to be checked. There are no roadblocks. There's nothing like that. But as Cyusa starts primary school, and then he starts going there and coming back, finding aunt home and talking to kids and starting to make friends, there is a question that comes to his head, that is on page 3, and he says, I'll read. He's talking to his aunt, and he asks her, "See, auntie, we don't even have uncles. Where are they? I mean your brothers, because you told me Paul is only my uncle, and I know Kalisa works with Papa. He's not even his cousin." So remember, if I may take you to the story, remember this aunt is a sister to Cyusa's mother, and Paul is actually dating his aunt, and so Cyusa talks to other children, and he learns that they have uncles, they have aunties and all that, and he does not have them. So he comes home to ask the question, and I wonder if you guys experienced that too. And that's something that I would like also Bruno to come back to, because even though he survived the genocide himself, but we can start with you. But I'm sure by the time you started in primary school and all that, and then you came to learn about your family, there's some things that you also asked yourself. So I wanted you to sort of give us a story. How was it when did you learn that you didn't have the same family members like everyone had? When did you learn that your mother had siblings that are not there? When did that come to you, and how was it? Just share with us the stories.
Well, first of all, I would say that I would say that God granted me, the grace of understanding things when I was a bit younger. So, my mother told me the story, the story about her family and what happened to them in genocide against Tutsi. It was a family of almost 12 people, and then in all of that people, the whole family, he left only 3 people among the family. So
those 3 include your mother?
Yeah, include my mother. So
the rest
gone. Yeah, gone. So I would say that.
So when did you come to learn that she lost all those family members?
I was a bit younger. I was in primary 3. Yeah, primary 3. Because in primary 3, in those 3 who were left, also the elder brother passed away, but it was not because of genocide or everything. He was sick, and then he passed away. And then I learned that there's other brothers, other sisters that my mother had, which I didn't get to know them. So I was like in primary 3, Yeah.
So after learning that, how did it change something about you? Did that affect you in any way?
Yeah, it did. I would say that it did. It did, because I wouldn't say it's jealousy, because I don't know my cousins. I would love to have cousins as well, just like Mr. Cyusa. I would love to have elder cousins. I would have to have elder brothers who look after me. I would have to have I used to hear my my classmates say that, I'm going to call, I was in secondary school, I'm going to call my cousin, he's somehow established financially,
Send
so
you
it's not
some-
something, yeah, and everything. And I'm like, I don't have that, so I need that. I used to hear them saying that I'm going to go out, I'm going to look for my cousin to give me, some internship and, some, yeah. So I say I would love to have that as well. So it did affect me. It made me growing up somehow isolated. Alone. Yeah. So, but with the grace of God.
Great. So let's go to Bruno. I'm sure you learned it way earlier than this guy. Probably you will tell us, but I guess you might have even seen the post-genocide marks for yourself, because I think by the time you come to know all these things, they were not completely washed off like today. So for you, share with us, when did you first learn that you actually survived the genocide and how you survived? Maybe you don't go into the story of how you survived, but when did you learn that you actually survived the genocide, that you had family members who are not there and all that?
My story is a bit complex or funny, because it's related with how I survived. Surviving because of a Hutu woman. So I was, as a young man, I was always told, you should say you are a Hutu, because you had to pass on roadblocks and all that. So even after that, my mind was already set.
No, just take it slowly. Who was telling you to always say that you're a Hutu?
So I survived because my nanny took me on her back, and she was a Hutu woman. So she always told me that we should say, a 4-year, 3.5, 4-year-old, they are very talkative. So she had to make sure that she tells me that, you have to say that you're a Hutu. So even after the genocide, that kept in my mind. And wherever I could say it at home after the genocide, that that I'm a Hutu, I will be even slapped. So I learned it the hard way because of what I believed before. And then I learned that there are bad people that I should not associate myself with. And that's why I started to ask why. And then I got some of the story slowly by slowly. But it all started by knowing who you are and who you should associate with and why you should not associate with those people. Yeah, that's how my story began.
One of other interesting things that you read about Cyusa is how they tell him that he resembles. So they said Divine resembles. She has big eyes and she resembles her aunties and grandpas. I also wonder if you guys, used to be told that you resemble some of the family members that were not there, and you could kind of feel like Divine and Cyusa felt about resembling people that are actually not there. What's your experience?
Well, it was not a lot, Okay, one thing I thank God for is that my mother did not slap her wounds in my face. That is one thing I thank God for. She was very wise to know how to manage her wounds and manage how she raises me. She was so much very wise, but also make me aware that some things happen to our family. So I would say that I was not told that in a lot of time, too many times. But I know there's one person in the family, in my mother's brothers, that she told me that I look like. I don't remember exactly the name of him, because she didn't tell me about him too much, because maybe she was not trying. She was trying to not, slap her wounds in my eyes and in my face. Yeah, but I know. Yeah.
She's a brave woman. Bruno, who do you resemble? That is gone.
I resemble my father a lot. Everyone who knew him, a bit in my family or neighbors, that's the first thing they say. Of course, like the story of Cyusa, Cyusa's aunt, there were no pictures, But later on, towards 2016, we found one picture. In 2023, someone else brought me a picture of my dad. So people said that I resemble him. So that's who I resemble. And I relate so much with the auntie, Cyusa's auntie, who says that when she asked to see the pictures, and she said that she doesn't have any picture. And yeah.
Okay. There's something you touched earlier that I wanted us to go back to, but we'll go back to it after reading the story of Cyusa in the book. You can go to page 5, where it says, "I was learning that I was in a hard family." Is it page 5? Because I have a soft book. So yeah. Okay. So can you read aloud?
It says, I was learning that I was in a hard family that was still healing, and I had to act and speak wisely. But as I continued to fill my mind of what my parents had gone through, I enlarged extreme hate for those who have made my parents suffer and was that even unusual at my age?
And you can continue on the aunt. Can you tell me about those who killed my family?
It's on page
6, I think.
Page 6, yeah. Yes. And can you tell me about those who killed my family? I heard it's Hutus. I heard it's Hutus, but I want to know them. Now, she was very shocked that time I see it in her. That time I see it in her face. Cyusa, what is up with you? Who told you that? Look here, they're not here. They're in prison.
Maybe you can even stop from there. And I wanted to ask you guys, because there are two things that Cyusa experiences at this young age. After learning, so Bruno had touched a bit about it. After learning that you lost family members, and they did not die because of natural causes, what you would call natural causes, they died because somebody killed them. You want to know who killed them. And then you want to know, naturally you want to do something about it. Justice, is ingrained in our nature. You want justice to prevail. So I wanted you guys to take us. Did you in any way experience what Cyusa experiences here?
Okay. For me, I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why. As I said in the introduction, it's the packaging, how you tell the story to the young people. Now, I thank God that I was born on my mother. My mother is a very, very wise woman. Now, the way she told me the story and expressed the story was in a way that, I experienced forgiveness first before I experienced what had happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
Was in a way that I experienced peace first before I experienced what happened to her. Yeah, so I would say for me, no, I didn't feel hate for the people who killed my family.
But also, that's, first of all, that's great. That's great the way she shared with you the stories. I think, just like you were saying, she sort of protected you a lot. But I wanted us to go back to when she's telling you these stories. Did you ask the questions? Is it something that never came to your mind? Did you maybe hear your mother and her relatives talk about those kind of things? I mean, when do you learn that, my family members were killed by a group that is called this? And do you have that curiosity to know who and all that?
I think my mother waited until I got into school so that they teach us in school what was going on in the genocide, where the genocide ideology came from and everything, so that I can go back home and ask her the stories about what had happened to our family, with a little bit knowledge about the genocide. Now, when I got back home, I asked her questions. Yes, of course, I asked her questions. But the way she answered the question was again so that I experience forgiveness first before I experience, anything. Because when you are telling somebody the story, for that person to understand the story, they have to imagine, be in your
Their shoes or
in your shoes or something like that, so they can understand what had happened to you. But her, I don't know how she did it. Maybe it is the grace of God, but she made me understand forgiveness and peace before I experience what had happened to her. And now it is something I even thank God for her. Even growing up, it is easy for me to forgive someone because I grew up in her hands. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you never you never got so curious about who specifically did what and all that?
Yeah, I did. I got curious about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked questions. He even told me the names of people, who killed.
Did you know those people?
I didn't know them.
So
Okay. They were even, in genocide stories, there are people who killed families in which they shared everything. Food, they shared, parties, they shared, traditions and everything. Now, she told me stories that were moving, that was, heartbreaking, about people who used to come to their place, to take food, and everything because they were a bit wealthy. So she told me about stories of people whom her father used, to do good, and then yet are the same people who killed their family. So I know all of those stories, and I heard all of those stories. But the packaging, the way she told me the story, was in a way that I experienced forgiveness first and peace before I experienced hatred. For.
So you never felt any hatred towards those who had killed you?
I would say no, but I would also say that it is the grace of God. Maybe.
Obviously, it has to be the grace of God. Yeah. Bruno, what's your experience?
It's a bit different with Kenny because I grew up in a family of people who talk about it a lot, who are wounded. Like the first 10 years after the genocide, I don't remember a day that it could be spent without talking about what they did to us and so being who. So for me it was more of a wounded family. But today I thank God that we are all healed, and encouraging everyone who still has that mindset to go on the feet of Jesus, and they will give them the truth, and the truth will set them free.
Wow. So as you mentioned earlier, you first learned that you have been calling yourself a Hutu, and then they tell you the Hutus killed our family, you shouldn't be calling yourself that. You're actually annoying us by calling yourself that. And then you learn that you resemble your father and they killed him. You learn about so this is funny because we co-host. I know so many stories about you, even those that you didn't mention. Yeah, but there's this one of your uncles that was one of your favorites that you learn about. And even when you're talking about him, you sound like you admire him. So, I mean, how did learning that there's a group of people that killed the people that you would have loved or that you love, even though you never met them, what did it do to you?
Of course, it raised hatred, and I couldn't understand them at first. I still don't understand them fully, but I couldn't understand them because growing up as a young man, we had friends who all of them didn't have fathers. So that was the question that was brought every time we sat as boys, and we reached at the extent of thinking, what can we do as a way of revenge? Because we felt like the soldiers, the RPF not revenging was a bit a sign of weakness. So to me, at first, the first stage was being annoyed and being angry. But I thank God that it reached a time where I feel now that I need to forgive them and pray for them. But at first it was more of anger issues. And
So in the book, Cyusa's father sits down with him and starts telling him what happened, and he starts telling him he does not excuse what the killers had done, but he's more like into trying to teach him that the only way, the best way to go about it is to forgive. I'm also asking myself how, of course, during that stage, so that there's this stage where you're angry against these guys that killed your parents and all that. This time that you feel hatred, how do you start to heal from that? Who speaks to you that tells you to forgive and all that? How does it come? How do you start the journey of healing?
So the journey of healing started when I became a Christian. That's when the journey of forgiveness started, and that's the journey to healing. And that's when I started understanding that actually, as survivors, we need to forgive. I started understanding the benefit of forgiveness, and knowing that forgiveness is for you. You benefit from it more than the perpetrator. So it all started from the cross, or from when I got saved or knew about Jesus. That's when my healing journey started. And
is there someone specific who spoke to you about all that, or is it just something that you kept processing as you read the Bible?
When I read the Bible, forgiveness didn't stand out as much. But when I attended the conference of one of the ministries that I work with called ANNELY, that's when they talked about forgiving other people's sins. And that stood out a lot for me, especially that the person who was teaching it, that we once hosted on this show called Lambert, he talked about it, and he stood in the gap of Hutu people. To me, that was a new concept. I even still remember the images as I speak about it today. So it was a very eye-opening that I need to forgive others for what they have done in my life to be able to receive the healing that God offers. Yeah.
That's good. So let's go back to Kenny. So Cyusa goes to high school, and he learns that one of his friends actually comes from a family of the perpetrators, and his father is in prison. I don't remember exactly if his father is in prison, but Mr. Hirua, who is their class representative, one of Cyusa's friends, again, mentioned it in class that Hirua's people have killed so many people and all that. And when Cyusa observes what Hirua is going through, he sort of understands that he's not the only one that is struggling with our history, but the other side is also struggling. Even so, it's something that I think we come back to some time back from the book of Antonio Taisere, when he says that it's not just the genocide survivors that need healing, even though they are the ones wounded, but he says that crime is like a double-edged sword. It wounds the victim, but it also wounds the offender. So I don't know if you have any stories of real situations that happened to you, or if you have, through your experience, interacted with people who also come from the other side, and what it is for them. Again, coming back those of your generation, the Gen Z, from the other side of families.
Yes, I have experienced such stories in school. Okay, for me, on my own side, I would say that I was born a happy kid, so I did not consider all of those differences, even though I know the stories and I know exactly what happened in genocide against Tutsi. So I did not care or pay attention on the differences between people, right? So I was more happier. So about the stories, I remember one of my, I won't say his name, But I remember one of my friends. He was born in a family that was the victim.
The victims or perpetrators?
No, survivors actually.
Okay, genocide survivors.
Genocide survivors. And then he told me one thing. He was my closest friend. He told me one thing. He said, if we were given a chance, a small chance, I would start with that one, go with that one, go with that one, go with that one, in just...
So he could identify the people?
Yeah.
Already of his age?
Yes, already of his age, identifying people, that we go to the same school, I want to revenge, the urge of revenge in him, was on fire, I would start with that one, I would start with that one, I would go with that one as well. And I'm like, these people from families that were perpetrators, they also need healing.
That's what you told him?
Okay, I didn't tell him exactly, but I thought that,
later.
Yeah, but this is what I told him. I told him, you can't do that. You can't do that because they didn't do it exactly, right? These people, these kids, they're innocent, so it's their family, but not them. So you can't do such thing because their family did this to your family. You can't do such thing. Don't do that, So what I told him was more of, being relieved of that burden of, revenge, because we kept on, discussing about all of those things, about the revenge and what had happened to his family, telling him, please remove that seed of revenge in you, because it's not a good thing it's not a good burden to bear.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Yeah.
Do you also interact with children from families where their parents maybe participated in the genocide or committed genocide? Did you ever interact with them and maybe hear their side of stories of their struggles, what they go through?
Me, I would say no, not too much. Not too much. Okay, I meet them and I know maybe what their family has done, but I don't go too much in details. Asking them, how did you grow up? What had happened to you? I mean, what was it like growing up in your environment? I don't go into much details like Bruno.
Like Bruno does. Bruno is so inquisitive. He would have to ask all those kind of things.
He's so much exhausted talking to him.
But this is something I'm also curious about it. I'm not a Gen Z. I'm a bit older than the Gen Z.
I'm here to interpret. Okay.
But this is something I'm curious about.
Okay.
Because people of my generation, Brunos, these are things that we talk about. Like, seriously. We talk about the things of tribalism. We talk about genocide.
Funny thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. That is not exactly what Gen Z talk about.
So actually, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you guys, what do you guys talk about when you're talking about the genocide? The 1994 genocide against Tutsi, not the Holocaust of the Jews. No, I mean the Rwandan genocide. But the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. What do you guys talk about when you're having a conversation?
I would say that I would also come back to the point of awareness. Most of this Gen Z, they are not aware that the wounds from genocide are affecting their lives as well. So they don't talk about it too much. They are so much driven with the outside world more than they're driven with the inside world, where they are, the environment they are into. So they don't talk about it too much. And even when they talk about it, they sort of try to step, in their fathers and mothers, they
try to step into their shoes.
Trying to be like, these people did wrong to me, this person did wrong to me. No, it is not, that is not what is, causing wounds into Gen Z. How do I explain this? That is not exactly
what causes them issues.
What causes them issues? They're not talking about what causes them issues from genocide. They're talking about their parents' wounds. They're not talking about their own wounds. So that is what they talk about mostly. They talk about their parents' wounds. And then they ignore their own wounds and what had happened, what they experienced growing up in such environment.
So there's a need for awareness for these kids to learn that actually their parents' wounds, their parents' woundedness somehow, the trauma that comes from what their parents experience somehow is transferred to them, and maybe somehow the way they act or behave has something to do with something they may not be aware of, but which is affecting them.
Exactly. There needs to be awareness. There needs to be awareness, which is what this sister did. You know, awareness, and you know, being aware of, you know, the attributes in the community, in the society, in the environment that you are in. Being aware that it's affecting you, you know, in your own way. Yeah, there needs to be awareness.
So, Mr. Bruno, there's a way that this is something that used to happen a lot in high school. If you are in senior 3 and the highest class in the school is senior 3, or if it's senior 6 and the oldest class is senior 6, you start acting like very, very mature. You start, you know, behaving as if you own the whole place and as if everyone else is a kid. So I don't want you to feel like that, but I also want you to be realistic with the generation, the Gen Z. Because it's something you also mentioned earlier, that they don't like talk about this a lot. They don't know much about Rwandan history and all that. So without acting so all that, don't you really think that, I mean, does it worry you that the Gen Z do not talk about these things? By the way, is it healthy for them to talk about it, or should they not talk about it? Should this bitter history of ours only be dealt by people who lived in it, and we leave these young people alone?
To answer your question, I will first thank the author of the book for having taken that bold step as a young lady and write about the issues. So that makes the people in our generation get the awareness. But when it comes to anyone, especially the kids who are born from survivors, or anyone who was in Rwanda at that time, they are affected by the history of their parents, because some of the times we even see, like me who work with them on it so many times, you see the wounds being transferred. It may come in a way that is different, but because they were rejected, because their parents were rejected, and even perpetrated, even killed, some of them were killed. When they come to their kids, sometimes they are too protective, or sometimes they have too much expectation for their kids as a generation that will raise, it's the only hope they have. So they are too strict to them. So these kids, because of being strict, because of parents who are strict to them, they also behave in a way that is wounded. Because if a parent is so protective, that means you'll be wounded, and you know that out there's something wrong, even if you can't put your fingers on it, but you know something is wrong out there. If too much expectations were put on you, when you come to work, you come with that mentality that I'll be accepted if I work so hard. So sometimes they don't know the reason or the root of their wounds, but the fact is that young people are born after the genocide, they have even much wounds, even more than the survivors themselves, because they were treated with the harsh, they were raised with wounded people, because in Kinyarwanda we say so their parents were raised by people who grew up in a country that flowed with milk and honey, so who still had values, who had a good heart, who had humanity. So their parents have that part, but because of their wound, the wounds kind of oppressed the humanity in them. So they are harsh, they use bad words, they use, so I'm talking about people in a bit older, than me, but even people who are my age who have already kids. So there are words that they tell their kids that people, what we may call their grandmother, would then tell them if they were still alive. So I think they are wounded even more, so I can still see the wounds being transferred to. Yeah.
By the way, as you work with the Gen Z, the one young people from all sides of our history, do you see divisionism among them?
I wouldn't. It's very hard because now you can't tell who is who. And parents, I thank God the politics of our country is against that. And so these guys who are in their 20s today, they really don't have divisionism in them or tribalism in them. So they are facing other wounds. So let's say people who are born in a family of perpetrators, some of them are lied to. They don't know where their grandfathers are. Because maybe the father doesn't want to associate himself with this guy who committed genocide. So there is a secret that they don't know, or something is kind of, they don't want to be involved, So when they grow up, they find out that they've been lied to, and trust becomes an issue. They say, if my parents can hide this information from me, who else can I trust? So for them, their wounds is coming in another way of trust from the other side.
Identity crisis.
Yeah. So I don't see tribalism, but I see wounds being transferred, and hurted young generation who may not exactly know where the wounds are coming from, but we have young people who are wounded.
But again, I know you work with a ministry that is around healing and reconciliation and all that. How do you help young people of this generation? I mean, when they come to see you, sometimes they are wounded by things they don't even know. Or someone is watching us, but he sees patterns in his life. Maybe he's using drugs, maybe he's using... These are extreme signs that show that there is something you did not deal with in your life and you don't know. So, I mean, what would you say? What would you say they could start from?
So, true healing is so me being an extremist, as some people call me.
An extremist in what?
When it comes to religion, so the only healing is in Jesus. People need. So this is in Isaiah 61, from verse 1 to 3, Jesus says he came to heal the brokenhearted. So the healing is on the cross. The healing is in Jesus. So when you come to Jesus, the Bible says you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. So when you come with that wound, let's say identity crisis, the word of God will tell you that you are God's children. So your identity will no longer be based on who you are or what the world calls you, but what the word of God calls you. So the first finger where I would point them is to Christ. And then the other deals will come after that. Because if we said that we'll tell them the stories and the history of the country, it may help, but it will not bring complete healing. So my advice will say, young people who have not yet accepted Jesus as their Lord and Savior, this is the best time, because your generation has so many opportunities. But if you don't have Jesus, you may end up wasting the opportunities that you have.
Yeah, so before I ask you the last question, let me first go to Kenny a bit. I saw you nodding earlier when Bruno mentioned about the strictness that parents, genocide survivor parents, may put on their children and the high expectations they may have on them. I felt maybe you have something to share around that.
Exactly. So there's this story. I've heard a story of someone. He grew up in a family that was very, very, very much strict. And then when he got, opportunity to go abroad, away from his family, this is what he said. He said, now that I'm not in the presence of my family, I'm going to drink as much. I'm going to have sex as much as possible. I'm going to do all of those pleasures that I did not do when growing up. And I'm like, okay, now, this is a wound being transferred to someone, because there was a lot. Like the family that he grew up in is a family that has a high profile. So when he grew up in that family, they expected him to be someone, expectations of family, and then they treated him in a very, very much strict way. So I was just like, this is a wound being transferred to someone. I'm like, oh, okay, well, good luck, brother. Like, because why would someone have that kind of mentality that because you're not in the presence of a family, you have to do something like that. So what Brother Bruno just said, also about Jesus and that true healing comes from Jesus. Yeah, true healing comes from learning the person of Jesus Christ, who Jesus Christ was, and learning what Jesus Christ can do in your life and allowing him to do such things in your life.
Before we get to the healing part, I wanted to first ask you, are there any experiences that you may share with us of what your generation or your age mates experience that shows that they have these, because we might say it in such very vague terms, and we may not have a chance to know what you guys really struggle with. And then once you have shared a bit about that, maybe you could also share with the young people, what do you think, which way you think is the way to healing? As you were mentioning, maybe to you it's Jesus. But before you could get that, I wanted you to first share with us what are some of these things that your age mates are battling with, and how you think they could find healing.
Yeah, okay. There's that one, strictness, but there's also lack of approval, in a family, growing up in such family, expecting you to be someone. It is as if your own needs are ignored. What you need is also ignored. Your dreams are ignored. So growing up in such family, sometimes even your emotional feelings are ignored. I was not supposed to say this, but it's okay. So there's this thing I told my mother, a few days ago. I'm like, Mom, you never told me too much enough that you trust in me. Like, you trust in me, like my son, I believe in you. You're going to be a big man. You're going to be this. You have not built that trust in me. Like, you did not tell me this. So growing up in such families, one of the signs that the wounds are successfully transferred is that
you are indeed born happy. I can't believe that you speak like that about something that's serious.
Okay, right.
But it's okay, it's alright, that's you. So
Okay.
it's just saying that the wounds are successfully transferred.
Okay. So one of the signs is you see someone trying to seek for approval outside, in an extreme way, in a weird way. So that shows you that in the family that he grew up in, that they didn't have that attention, growing up. Another.
By the way, if I may ask what I asked Bruno too, do you see any sort of divisionism that is related to our history, of being Hutus and Tutsis in your generation? Is there anything like divisionism? Okay,
the division in Gen Z is not about Hutus and Tutsi. I would say that it's about some things else. Sometimes, growing up from less privileged family, others growing up in, overprivileged families, it's more of that.
That's more like any other society, not.
Yeah. It's not in Gen Z, Yeah, so.
And I think that's a very big step. It's an important thing to learn that what has destroyed our nation to the extent that it destroyed it is not
Some of the
current
Gen-
in your...
some of the Gen Z, they don't even understand what qualified you to be, you know, a Tutsi, or what qualified you to be Hutu. They don't even understand, right? So it's a really big step that which I thank our government for, you know, because we did not experience that. Oh my goodness! If some of the stories of our parents, when I hear them, you know, being called out, you know, as a Tutsi in a whole congregation of a lot of people, were harsh. If it was me, I couldn't bear it.
Anyway, so as we come to the end of our conversation, any of your age mates who is struggling with any of the battles that you mentioned, or even those that you didn't mention, how do you think they could find healing? Or what would you like to tell them? What would you like to tell your generation? And those of us who are a little bit, who are your big brothers but not your parents, and those who are our parents, who is our parents to all of us.
Yeah. Okay. I would say come to Jesus. Okay. There's a small. Okay. I wasn't supposed to do this, but there's a small melody that
Feel
came
free.
into my mind.
You want to sing for us?
Okay. I'm a singer.
Awesome.
Okay, it came into my mind when I was reading a book, the book of Matthew, you know. It was in chapter 11, you know, verse 28, I guess, you know. So it was going like that. He that is burdened, come to the Lord. So I would say, please come to the Lord Jesus Christ. So Jesus Christ is everything, is the only healing, is the only... If someone himself said that I'm the only truth and the way, pause right there, which means that I'm the only way to the healing, you know. If someone called the burdened to himself, come, I'm going to make you lose your burdens, you know, and everything. So Jesus is the only way to healing. Learning him, you know, allowing him to take over your life is the only way.
Wow. Thank you. Bruno, what are your lasting words? Not last words, but what should be your lasting words?
So since you guys continue to talk about Gen Z and all that, my last words will be to them and encouraging them, telling them that no matter how hard, whatever they may be going through, be it with their parents. I was reading this chapter about life in the book, and we can't even be able to explain to how hard or how tough it is for these guys, because of the parents and the families where they're supposed to get the nurture and the protection from. And now we are being raised by someone who is wounded, who you can't talk freely to, because they will say, we netaho, and all those words that they use. Because for you think something it's normal, and the other generation thinks that's being childish or that's being extravagant. So I would say we here understand your pain, but it's time to have a good transaction, because if these guys decide to end the wounds, it will be successful. But if they decide to pass it on to whatever generation, if it's X or Y that will come after them, then it will be worse. So I would say make a decision, not accepting the fate, but analyze what is happening in your life and put an end to it. And as we said, the only way is through Jesus Christ, and he will help you, and he will mend you, and he will restore you inside out, in Jesus' name.
That sounds like a prayer. Should we say amen?
Amen.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having followed the conversation. More conversations are coming. We only gave you a taste of this book, but it would be much better if you guys could get the book and read through and understand the stories of what these young people go through. And if you'd like to buy a copy, you could contact us. You could write a comment to us. We could find a way to contact each other. We could write to any of our social media handles at Vital Readings, whether it's on Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, everywhere, and then we'll find a way to get you the copy. So thank you so very much. The books, he says, that are in Caritas too. So in town, you could get the books. Do the Gen Z know where Caritas is? Anyways, yeah, we are saying that you could find a copy and read this very interesting book. And as I mentioned earlier, this is just one of her books, but there's another book that she wrote that is called Rebounce. God willing, we'll also work on it. We'll have a review about it sometime soon. So, see you.